I'm David Haynes. I'm editorial page editor of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. And we're joined today by former Wisconsin Governor Tommy Thompson, who's a candidate for U.S. Senate. Governor Thompson, welcome.
David, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thanks
I
for
like
being
your
here.
new digs. When I was governor, you didn't have such fancy places, but it's nice to come in with the new Journal communication company with spending all this money on these fancy digs.
Well, I'd like to ask, I'll ask the first question, but then as we go around the table, if each of our reporters and members of the editorial board would please identify yourself and what you do. When you ask your first question, that'd be appreciated. So, Governor, you've taken a few knocks recently, actually from the start, from the Club for Growth, about your record.
Yeah.
They said you raised taxes, you were a big spender. The Republican Party generally is a little more conservative than it was the last time you ran. How do you defend your record?
Very simple.
To this
But
this group
first
of
off,
voters.
First off, David, thank you for the question because there's a lot of mischaracterizations, and the Club for Growth has been attacking me since last September. Before I even announced that I was going to be a candidate, they wanted to try and drive me out of the race. So they started last September, about almost 11 months ago, and they've spent millions of dollars to tear down my record. Let's take a look at that. First off, on the taxes, they say I raised taxes 9 times. Well, I cut taxes 91 times, and saving the taxpayers $16 billion. Cut income taxes 3 times. Eliminated the inheritance taxes. I always use my example of Michael Cudahy. Michael Cudahy left the state when inheritance taxes went up, and he came back to Milwaukee. And just look at all the buildings that have a touch of Michael Cudahy. It would not have happened if I would not eliminate the inheritance taxes, eliminated the gift taxes, and gave the people of the state of Wisconsin not 1 but 2 property taxes. Now the Club for Growth says I raised taxes 9 times. I cut taxes 91. They say I raised taxes 91 times. 6 of the 9 were automatic indexing of gasoline. Remember when the automatic indexing? It happened before I was governor. And so I'm getting blamed for an automatic indexing that used to be, and most people don't remember that, especially the people around this table. And so 6 out of the 9. 2 were to build 2020. If you remember correctly, we had a very poor infrastructure in the state of Wisconsin, and I went in to build Wisconsin. So in order to attract businesses. And we were able to raise 2 gasoline taxes to put money in to remake Wisconsin. We had 4-lane highways across 29. Remember the old bloody 29 that so many people got killed, and we were able to do that. We built a 4-lane highway from Dubuque, Iowa, all the way up to Green Bay. We built 4-lane highways all the way up to Superior, 4-lane highways all the way up to Minocqua. And we opened up the state. Result of that infrastructure investment, we were able to create 742,000 jobs. The state set the tone, and the business community responded. The 1 nursing home tax, if you remember correctly, the nursing homes wanted to be able to modernize their facilities. So they requested a nursing home tax increase so that they could use the money from that tax to improve their facilities so they could give more quality care. So that's the taxes, completely a mischaracterization and an absolutely distortion of my record. My record is 91 tax cuts, $16 billion saved. The taxes I put in were to build Wisconsin. Spending. Let's take a look at spending. The Democrats were in control of both houses of the legislature. And in 1993, we were successful in getting a qualified economic offer through, a QEO. Remember that? And we put a revenue limit on school spending. And we also put a municipal levy limit. And the next year, 94, we campaigned across the state of Wisconsin. Okay? I led the campaign. We led the campaign, and we picked up, for the first time in 24 years, the same number of years that Eric Tubby has lived outside the state of Wisconsin, I might add. 24 years since the Republicans had control, from 1970 to 1994. And we came back in control of both houses of the legislature. We campaigned that year on picking up 2/3 of the cost of education. The way you ask the question, it's the same way that Democrats and liberals always say that a tax cut is spending. It is not. And we put the revenue limits and the QEO, so school boards, if we picked up 2/3, could not spend the money, it would drive it through to property taxes. We picked up control of both houses of the legislature. Dave Prosser was Speaker, as you would qualify, a big liberal. Mike Ellis was Majority Leader of the Senate. There was a guy by the name of Scott Walker who came in a special election, but was there. And there was a guy by the name of Glenn Grothman, another one of those, liberals. And the Republicans voted, and we picked up 2/3. I picked up 68% of the vote, the highest vote ever, the second highest vote any person's ever got running for governor. I carried 70 out of 71 counties. I carried Dane County. No Republican's ever done that. And so it was the response to our message of picking up 2/3. And so we were able then to pick up 2/3, but that money went directly to a property tax cut. Not one, but two, $1.2 billion. That's what they're saying is spending. It actually was a Republican initiative. Frank Lassay, Margaret Farrell, all those people voted for it, Scott Walker. And so it was really a tax cut. And we had to do it that way in order to get property taxes down because people were complaining. The only other increase really was the fact that we built some prisons because people were complaining about the fact that we had a revolving door in Wisconsin. People would commit a crime and then go out the back door with the probation and so on. And we strengthened the sentencing laws and we built some prisons in the state of Wisconsin. And that was the second cost of spending. But ever since then, we built the prisons, crime has gone down in the state of Wisconsin or has stayed pretty much flat.
So what would you point to as
So-
your conservative credentials in a
91 tax,
in a primary race?
91 tax cuts.
Yeah.
I also am the only one that's been endorsed by Ronald Reagan. Also, at the same time, I
Not in
started.
this race, I'm assuming.
No, he didn't come out, but he did endorse me when I ran. And also, I eliminated one of the entitlement programs. We had 3 entitlement programs: Medicare, we had welfare, and we had Social Security. And I, against a lot of opposition, including this paper, came in with a work program, and we were able to pass that and start welfare reform and W-2. And as a result of that, we were able to reduce the welfare caseload. I think it was 95,000. I know you'll check it out. But I think it was down to 5,000. I think about a 93% reduction when I went to Washington. And that has been the biggest program. And then we started school choice. Your paper was against it when I started, but now your paper has, ever since I left being governor, your paper has been editorializing in favor of it. And I thank you for that because it was the right thing to do. It was competition. And to let poor people make a decision, make a choice as to where they wanted to send their children. I will argue with anybody that I am the most conservative person because I started these programs and was the beginning of the conservative revolution. Nobody else has ever been able. You point to another governor that had 91 tax cuts. You talk to another governor any place that has ever eliminated an entitlement program. They can't because there's only been one that's eliminated, welfare. And school choice was started here. All the major conservative programs I initiated. And so I would dare to say that you look at my record, the totality of my record, instead of picking and choosing, and as some people are saying, a tax cut is not spending. It was a property tax cut. All the Republicans rallied behind me, and the legislature introduced the law and passed it, and I signed it. So I would say, and look at the program, look at the planks right now. There has been nobody that has advocated right now for an 18% ceiling on expenditures and revenue. Nobody has ever, to the best of my knowledge, has ever advocated for an 18% ceiling on revenue.
18% of GDP.
Of GDP.
Yeah.
Of revenue. And so that's the most conservative idea of all the candidates out there. So I would, argue, I would discuss it with anybody. I really sincerely think that there's no question, but I am the conservative candidate. I have accomplished it. And I am the only one that I believe that can win this race.
Lee Berquist.
You've talked a lot about spending. Oh, again, Lee Berquist, reporter at the Journal Sentinel covering the Senate race. You've talked a lot about tax cuts during the campaign and during your tenure as governor.
Yeah.
But didn't the average income tax payments rise by some 127% when the state stopped indexing income tax rates in 1986? That was from 86 to 98 when you stopped indexing the rates. And that drove many taxpayers into higher tax brackets.
I disagree with you. I don't think that's correct, Lee. I think if you look at it, the Tax Foundation says that under my leadership, the 14 years taxes went down, the totality of taxes went down in the state of Wisconsin, and I sincerely believe that.
The totality went down, but in that instance with the indexing, didn't they go up?
I don't believe so. But, you're asking me a question that you probably have done some research on. I'd have to go back and give it,
But you don't believe so?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
But, Marty Kaiser, editor of the Journal Sentinel.
Yeah.
Let's stay on the subject of taxes a little bit. Simpson-Bowles Deficit Commission suggests that to provide Americans with what they want from the next few decades from Social Security and Medicare, while also cutting the deficit, that it's going to take some tax increases. Aren't tax increases inevitable as part of any solution?
No, I think, it's not inevitable. If you put a cap, if you do what I'm advocating, put in it for a balanced budget and request that every agency takes a 5% reduction, but at the same time giving the secretaries the authority, which I requested when I was secretary, to reduce their budget by 5% each year and be able to reorganize their department and eliminate programs, you will be able to get to a balanced budget. If you have also, coupled with that, an 18% ceiling in revenue and expenditures. And everybody says you gotta have tax increases. No, you don't have to have tax increases. You have to have the courage to stand up and be able to redefine government and require the federal government to take a 5% reduction in their budgets and also be able to have an 18% ceiling.
So how would you address Medicare? That's one of the biggest budget busters coming down the pike. What would your plan be?
Medicare is, most people don't even understand Medicare, and I ran Medicare, so I'm pretty knowledgeable about it. You got to realize that right now, as I told you, the gross national product, or I speak about it, I think you all know what it is. It's around $15 trillion, shy of $15 trillion, but it's $15 trillion. In the federal government, you have to look out 75 years to be able to determine what the unfunded liabilities are, Dave. And that's the federal law. So the unfunded liabilities of Social Security, which is about $12 trillion, okay? The unfunded liabilities for Medicare is much higher. You want to hazard a guess? The actuaries cannot really tell exactly how much. It's somewhere between $40 and $72 trillion. So if you got $40 to $72 trillion, let's take the most conservative number of $40 trillion. It is impossible to grow out of it. And all those people say, well, we're just going to be able to grow out of it, and we're going to be able to maintain Medicare as it is. Really don't understand it first, and really are not telling you the truth. And the Democrats always say that, we're just going to, keep plowing money in. You can't put enough money in to come up to be able to keep funding Medicare when you have that kind of unfunded liability.
So unchanged, it's a huge problem.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And somewhere between 2018, I say 2018, Paul Ryan says 2022, so let's use Paul's figure. I think it's much sooner than that. Medicare goes broke. So that means you're gonna have to make, some serious discussions and make some serious decisions, and the sooner we do it, the better off we're gonna be. So first off, you gotta be able to talk to the seniors of America and tell them that all those that are on Medicare and all those that are 55 up until the year 2020, up until 2020, are gonna be on Medicare, and nothing's gonna change. So, between 2012 and 2020, anybody that gets on Medicare and in 2020, and when you reach age 55, you're gonna have to make a choice. Choice is this: do you wanna continue on Medicare, a system that's going broke, or do you wanna go have a subsidized system in which you have the same benefits that you currently get under Medicare? And that's gonna be a choice. People reaching age 55 at 2020 are going to do it. But it is not going to impact at all the people that are on it or will be on it up until 2020.
So that sounds a lot like the Ryan plan.
It
Do
is.
you support
It
the
is.
Ryan,
It-
you
it-
support
it-
the Ryan plan?
With that change, Ryan
Explain that change again. So
Ryan came out with a plan that says 2020, everybody has to do it.
Right.
I wrote to him, and I don't know if Lee, if you were, it wasn't, you were not following me, but your friend, my friend from Washington,
Craig, yeah.
Craig, was interviewing me before this, and I said, this is how I would change it. Now, Paul with Senator Wyden, have agreed to that change. But if you look back, when Craig was talking to me about this, I was advocating this before that came out, but but Paul told me he had already been considering that for a long time and figured that was gonna be his back position. But the truth of the matter is, you're gonna be able to then, whoever reaches age 55 in 2020, is gonna be able to make a choice of whether or not you wanna stay in Medicare or have a choice and go into a subsidized program that purchases commercial insurance as long as it's equal the benefits. You'll have several programs, companies, programs, policies to choose from.
And that's means tested for wealthier people?
No.
You would not means test it?
I would not.
Okay. Would you raise the age for eligibility?
At this point in time, no.
Okay,
But that's what you have to do.
okay.
And people that tell you, we'll just keep the Medicare, fiscally, financially, it's impossible. And so it's nice, for people to try and obfuscate and say, well, we're just going to keep Medicare. I've run it. I've looked at the figures. You can't. But you don't want people, to say, well, you're going to ruin Medicare. Everybody's on Medicare. Everybody's going to be on Medicare up until 2020 is going to be able to stay on. It's only those that reach age 55 in 2020 and below will have to make a choice. They could continue on Medicare, but those that don't will have a choice.
Critics of the Ryan plan say that it's unreasonable to expect that the subsidies that would be involved, and I can't remember exactly what the amounts are, would be enough for the average person to go out and get a decent health care plan. What's your reaction?
It's absolutely false, because you're gonna have to make it so that it is, what I've just said in my program, it's gotta be equivalent to what you would get under Medicare. Okay?
Okay.
So stay on that subject a little bit and talk about Social Security. When one of your opponents, Mr. Hovde, was in here, he was talking about solving this problem of Social Security down the road. And one of the things he mentioned was the possibility of that means testing, that people in his income bracket would not get as much Social Security as other people. How do you feel about that?
There are ways to handle Social Security. I'm not ready to go to means testing Social Security. Now, Social Security, we got more time, and it's not nearly as difficult to find answers for Social Security, Marty. Social Security will not be bankrupt until right now, the last projection coming out of the board, which I used to sit on, is 2038. So we got plenty of time to work it out. And I don't think you should be jumping ahead right now to solve that problem when we get more immediate problems that need more immediate attention. The first thing you have to do is you have to, just by changing the indexing to what is actual indexing, you're gonna save a lot of money, and you're gonna be able to extend Social Security in its current shape a lot longer than what it is right now, and that's what I would be advocating, okay? The immediate problems right now for America, people, there's been a lot of people, that are use Social Security as a wedge issue to try and scare seniors, but Social Security is very strong. Social Security is gonna be there, and Social Security is not an immediate problem facing this country, such as the debt, such as the doctor fix, such as Obamacare, such as the sequestration, such as the debt ceiling, such as the Bush taxes. These are the 6 immediate things that are going to be facing the incoming Senate. And I would subscribe and I would submit that only myself, because 3 out of the 6 deal with health care, have a plan, have the knowledge base to be able to be on day one a contributor. I've already been told by people in the Republican hierarchy that I would be playing a very major role on healthcare as soon as I get there, because they have individuals that will use my counsel, my knowledge on healthcare to be able to develop a better plan after Obamacare, the Accountable Care Act, is repealed.
Let's talk about that for a second.
You
I'm sorry, Ernie Franzen, I'm the Associate Editorial Page Editor.
You're the what?
Associate Editorial Page Editor.
Oh, you work for David?
I do work for David. It's a
All
great
right,
job.
fine.
Thank you.
All right, so that's why he's pointing to you, and he gave you that little note and told you what they asked me. I say, all right, I just want to
he
know.
pulls my
I
strings.
just want to know how this works.
You just saw it.
I just saw
We
it.
usually
Just
use
saw
text
an action.
messaging, but I turned my phone
You
off.
should have had it, but you didn't. I saw him slip under it. I thought, no, this is not very high tech. They're swapping notes here. How do we get Tommy Thompson out?
No, I actually wanted to know about lunch for tomorrow.
Who was by?
Fine. But you can talk about
Is it Ernie?
healthcare reform. Ernie, right.
Okay. Where are you from?
I've been with this paper for 30 years. So, from Milwaukee.
Good. Thank you, Ernie. Go ahead, fire away.
We've met before.
Yes, we have. I know that, but
Your opponents have said that you were for Obamacare and now you're against it. They've talked about that.
I've never been for Obamacare.
Okay.
Never.
And if you could talk about, your position on healthcare reform.
Okay, fine.
What would you replace it with? Are there any parts of the current plan that you like, such as the no pre-existing conditions, that sort of stuff?
First off, people don't understand how Obamacare happened. And there was some question about a speech I gave in 2006 on individual mandates. The Heritage Foundation came out for a program and saying that we should have individual mandates. I gave a waiver to Mitt Romney to try the Massachusetts program. And he, in that program, was a mandate. I gave a speech to in 2006 and also in 2007 on a program. I was a national speaker on healthcare at that time. I can't remember, it was a device manufacturing, a pharmaceutical group or a group of doctors. And I was laying out positions, and I was laying out heritage, and I said, states, I'm a big believer in states' rights of the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, that states should have the opportunity to choose, okay? And so I did say individual mandates is something that states should have the opportunity to explore and participate in if they so desire, okay? And this also was the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank in Washington that came out with this. In 2008, before Obama got elected, the Senate Finance Committee asked me to testify with Donna Shalala on health care and also specifically on a mandated insurance program. Donna Shalala's position was for a mandate, and I was opposed to it. A year from one speech, 2 years from the other speech. So in 2008, I was unequivocally opposed to a national mandated enrollment, okay? And I testified under oath, and Donna Shalala took the opposite position. She was for it. I was opposed to it. And then Barack Obama, this is before, pre-Obama, and then I tried to develop a bipartisan proposal, and I worked very hard on that, Ernie, to get a bipartisan health care with Republicans from the Senate and the House, and we tried to get a bipartisan program. We worked on that up until, I think, September or October of 2009. In August of 2009, the Tea Parties came out and very much in opposition of, at that time, a program that had been passed out of the 3 committees. It was written by the Commerce Committee, the Education and Labor Committee, and also the Ways and Means Committee, Charlie Rangel and Henry Waxman and George Miller, the consigliere to Speaker Pelosi. And then it came back, and then Speaker Pelosi, so Obamacare hadn't even entered into this. And then in September, they came back from the recess, and Speaker Pelosi said, we're gonna pass a health care bill, okay? This is pre-Obamacare. Now it was Speaker Pelosi's bill. Go back in your annuals and you'll find out it was Speaker Pelosi. She rewrote the bill. 3 committees reported out the same bill. That would be like having the Chicago Bears, the Green Bay Packers, and the Minnesota Vikings all on a Sunday afternoon calling the same place. It doesn't happen. But if you go back in history, you will find that I am correct. The 3 committees reported out the same bill. That was the one that the Tea Party, all Democrats, and no Republicans were supporting it, and the Tea Parties came out against it, as I did. And then Speaker Pelosi in September of 2009 said that she wanted to rewrite the bill, and she did, and that they were going to have to pass it before Thanksgiving, or else they were afraid they were going to run into the Tea Party again. Mm-hmm. From that time, it was Speaker Pelosi's bill, not Obamacare, okay, Speaker Pelosi. And then she passed that pre-Thanksgiving 2009. And then after that, it went over to, at that time, it was the Senate Finance Committee. If you remember correctly, Ted Kennedy had just died. He had been working on it. And they had given, I think, Chris Dodd the power of the Health Committee at that time. And he didn't know anything about health care. And he came out with a bill in the Health Committee that didn't go anywhere and was not acceptable to the Senate Democrats. And Senate Finance Committee was headed by Max Baucus. And he came up and he worked on it. And I attempted to make some changes. And he said, no, this is going to be a Democratic bill. This was in November of 2009. I said, I'm out of it, and I'm opposed to it. And they didn't want any Republicans or bipartisan. So then, coming out of the Senate Finance Committee in late November or early December of 2009, the Senate Finance Committee was the health care bill. They had left Speaker Pelosi, still no Obamacare. Right. I'm gone, I'm speaking, I said, it's purely a partisan bill, I'm opposed to it, okay? And so the Senate Finance Committee then works on it, and then there's an election, 2 elections. 2 elections, election in Virginia, and an election in New Jersey. Bob McDonough won Virginia, and Christie won New Jersey against Corsi. And the people said, healthcare is dead. And I'm the only one, I believe, that said, no, it's not dead, it's gonna come back. There's no Republicans now. This is now strictly a Democrat finance bill, right. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so on December, somewhere in the first week in December, Barack Obama called up Senator Baucus and said, you gotta pass, and Harry Reid, you gotta pass a healthcare bill. No Obamacare yet, okay? Now it's the Finance Committee. And then in December of 2009, the Senate said they couldn't do it, and Obama said, you're going to, and then he called Harry Reid up to the Oval Office again and said, you're gonna pass it? And Harry Reid said, we can't pass it. He said, you gotta pass it. And so Harry Reid came out and told everybody, somewhere around the 14th or 15th of December 2009, you're not gonna go home for Christmas. Any of you people remember that? I'm telling you stories now that's behind the scenes. So every telephone the next day lit up in the United States Senate from Democrats, spouses back home, and says, I want you to know that I'm not spending Christmas alone with your mother. Okay? True story. And so this is sometime after the 15th of December. And then they still try to get votes. So on December 21st, they cut a deal. They're 3 votes short on December 20th. On 21st, they cut a deal with Bill Nelson, the senator from Florida. He wanted to change Medicare Advantage so the people in Florida could always have Medicare Advantage. They gave that to him, so Senator Bill Nelson, is it coming back now? Okay, so then on the 22nd of December, they went to Mary Landrieu. And Mary Landrieu, we said, we had the tsunami, and we had the hurricane, and we had a lot of problems. And so we repurchased the Louisiana Purchase and paid 4 times as much. Okay? And we got Senator Mary Landrieu on the 22nd. And so on this December 23rd, Christmas is coming now. And so on December 23rd, they cut the biggest deal ever because Ben Nelson from Nebraska said he would never vote for it under any circumstances. They cut the biggest deal that's ever been cut for any senator, and that is that the people from Nebraska would never, ever have to pay for any increase in Medicaid. And that was like driving up to the Treasury every Friday afternoon and load up Wells Fargo armed truck and take it to Omaha, Nebraska. And so, if you remember correctly, Ben Nelson caught a lot of heck from the people for making that deal. Mm-hmm. So now they have the votes. Now it's the 23rd of December. Christmas is the 25th. On the 24th of December, 2010, for the second time in the history of our country, the United States Senate Democrats call not a special session, go into session. And at 9:30 in the morning, they pass the Senate Finance Committee bill. Still no Obamacare, all right? No Republicans, all Democrats, and that's the way they want it. So nobody has been for Obamacare. And so then in January, we have a special election in Massachusetts on January 20th, I think, 2010. And that is for Ted Kennedy's seat. And guess what happens? There are no living Republicans alive in Massachusetts, and yet a Republican won. And there was an earthquake in Washington. And that was the death of health care. Everybody thought. And I said, no, they're going to find a way to come back. And then, I'm giving, but I'm telling you what happened.
It's a history lesson, yeah.
I'm telling you. Then what happened is in the first week in February, there was a visit to the White House by President Bill Clinton. And he said, I want to tell you a story. I want to give you a history lesson. The history lesson is this, Mr. President and Rahm Emanuel. He says, back in '93, I was president, and I was married to Hillary, and she started a bill called Hillary Care. And we were moving right along, and we thought we were going to get it passed. And then there were special elections in Virginia and New Jersey. And Christy Todd Whitman, remember that name? Won in New Jersey. And George Allen, who's running for the U.S. Senate, won in Virginia. And everybody on the Democratic side got cold feet, and they didn't pass Hillary Care. And you know what happened, Mr. President and Mr. Speaker and Mr. Chief of Staff? The following year, in November of 1994, I got Newt Gingrich and the Republicans take over. And the same thing's gonna happen to you if you don't pass health care. That was the birth of Obamacare.
And so the point is, you're saying you didn't favor that. Are there any elements
Right. Are
of
there
the
any elements
current
that you
bill,
would
though,
support?
that you would
No,
support?
because you gotta repeal it in order to replace
So
it.
what would you replace it with?
Okay, here's what I would do. First thing you have to do is you have to put in, you have to change the system from a disease system to a wellness system. Right now, we wait till people get sick and then we pay billions of dollars, Dave, to get them well. If you have a car, you change oil and grease, preventative maintenance. And so you're gonna have to make sure you go into a wellness and prevention program and change it from a disease system to a wellness system. The second thing you gotta do is you've gotta be able to do something about chronic illnesses. You've gotta be able to,
Before you go there, how do you change incentives so that you get from fee to service, which is, I think, part of what you're talking about, to a different approach for
you gotta
managing
change
illness?
the whole concept because, I'll get to that if you give me a
Okay.
little time to.
Okay, sure.
To develop it. So then you gotta do something about chronic illnesses. And this is where the incentives are gonna come in. You're gonna have to have some incentives for companies to be able to make sure that their employees that they cover by insurance are able to be tested and able to use wellness and prevention to keep well in the first place. And it's gonna be, and a lot of companies are doing it already on their own. And there needs to be some kind of inducements to make sure that we're able to make sure that people eat properly. But it's gonna be more of an education thing than telling people what they have to eat. It's gonna be more of an education thing, and you're gonna have to have, an opportunity for wellness, to keep people well in the first place. And then, what you're gonna have to do is you're going to have to change the system from one that's based upon quality. I started this when I was secretary, based upon hospitals depending upon quality and also nursing homes. And so if you get sicker or have a new disease or infection while you're in the hospital or nursing home, that has got to be a responsibility of the nursing home or the hospital there. And that's the quality, and you're gonna have to figure out a way to get paid more for quality. The fourth thing you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to change the way we pay for doctors, because right now, doctors have to generate fees by procedures. It's a wrong-headed way, so you gotta be able to holistically bundle the payments or have holistic approaches to be able to have doctors be able to do it. The fifth thing you have to do is if you're ugly going into the hospital, more than likely you'll be ugly coming out. And you shouldn't be able to sue because you're not beautiful, right? So you've got to be able to change the system so doctors do not spend so much time, trying for practice defensive medicine. You've got to be able to set up some sort of arbitration type of thing so doctors are able to do it.
So what's the government's role in in trying to change those incentives, though, from fee for service to that more holistic sort of look at it?
It's gonna have to be, the government's gonna have to do
payments?
that. It's gonna have to be very much involved, but it's gonna have to be in concert with hospitals and doctors. The problem with what took place, no doctors or hospitals was ever involved. And I could go on and tell you the other chapters of why it's so screwed up and why it has to be changed, because it never was vetted in a public hearing and didn't go through the conference committee to be ironed out. So the bill that was passed really did not work. The Obamacare bill did not work. That's why they had to have a backup bill that gave all the power to Catherine Sebelius. It's out of a 2,028-page bill. There's about 1,020 shells in it. And that's why they structured it 2014, so she'd have the opportunity. That's why it's got to be repealed and start over with a fresh approach to be vetted with doctors and hospitals. The next thing you have to do is you have to be able to purchase health insurance across state lines and you can buy anything else, and they don't have to be registered in the state. And you got to be able to set some parameters, but people have got to be able to do it. The next thing, people have got to be able to personalize their own health insurance. If you're a single male, you should be able to determine, what your cost deductibles are, and be able to do that, and you shouldn't have to buy maternity coverage. You know, those are the things that you should be able to do and be able to do it. And finally, 1% of the people use up about somewhere around 14%. Now, these are the sickest of the sick, the dual eligibles, people that are extremely sick. We have to do, as a society, a better job of managing them. And then the final thing we have to do is we have to give the states block grants in order to set up a Medicaid program that works in their state.
What about
And
elements?
all of those things put together, I have plans for, to change healthcare, make it more affordable, more acceptable, and more competitive and market-based. And that's what I want to do. And I'm the only one that has a plan, and I will submit to you, the big issues are going to be in healthcare, and I'm the only one that really understands it and knows how to work the system and make it better. Go ahead, Ernie.
Sorry, a couple of popular elements of the current bill is the no pre-existing conditions.
And some of those are
And
going to,
keeping your kids till they're 26. Now, would those be parts of the new plan?
I think that there's gonna have to be some discussions, and those they have to work in, Ernie. I wouldn't say automatically, but there would have to be certainly some acknowledgement that some of those things would have to be looked at. Okay?
Dan Bice, I'm a columnist.
I'm sorry I took so long, but I wanted you to know
Sure, no, I understand.
that there is no Obamacare, and I have never been for Obamacare.
Okay.
Since you took so long with his, just give me short answers on a few things, okay?
Well, I want to make sure that,
I understand.
that even you, Dan, understand that, I'll tell you.
Oh, you've given up hope. When you were governor, you set the standard for fundraising. You were raising money unlike any other governor before. You
Oh,
were going out of state.
I wouldn't say that, but I did okay.
But your performance in fundraising in this election is a little underwhelming. You're just a little better than Newman. I was pretty surprised that you weren't doing much better. What's going on? Did you lose your golden touch? People moved on and they're no longer giving to you? Why is it that-
No. You gotta look at the times, Lee.
Remember, keep it short.
Okay, but you gotta look at the times. I mean, we had 15 recalls a year ago. We had the presidential primary, and we had 4 Senate and Lieutenant Governor and the governor, 6 special elections, primary elections, and then 6 general elections, and June 5th. And every one of those candidates took money. Every one of those races took money. We've never had so many elections back to back. And by June 5th, Governor Walker went through the state and picked up every loose change. And by June 5th, people were just tapped out. And tired? I mean, they're tired of constant campaignings, constant giving, constant volunteering. So come June 5th, people are just, set up, and everybody says, well, wait till we get done with the recall, Tommy. So you had that phenomena that you just, and the state was tapped out. Simple as that. It was nothing about me or any rejection or any questions about it. It was just people were tapped out. They were tired. And they wanted to have the summer off, and only now is it's starting to turn around and people are starting to take interest. You know that. There's very little interest in this race because people don't even know. They're waiting, for September when usually we have a primary. It's in August. We've never had that. All of these things come together. So there was I don't think anybody could raise money under that situation.
So are you surprised that this close to the election, you're neck and neck with a guy who hasn't lived in the state in 24 years and has
No.
never held elective office?
No,
This has always been described as, this is Tommy Thompson's race to lose. And right now, you're tied with less than 2 weeks to go.
But I've been outspent 10-1, Lee. You tell me anybody else would even be in the race except for Tommy Thompson. If anybody else, take a look at what I've gone through. Since last September, the Club for Growth has spent millions of dollars, making accusations about my record which were untruth. Then Eric Hovde started personal attacking me, and he's been doing it consistently. Then Newman, and I finally wrote him a letter after a long time, so I'm gonna have to respond because my record is in question, and you're absolutely fabricating and misstating my positions, such as a lobbyist, such as I was for Obamacare, such as all of these things, which are absolute barefaced lies.
But
And so I responded.
You and I go back a while.
Yes, we do.
When I first met you, everybody considered you a pragmatist. When there was a problem, you used government to come up with a solution. Badger Care. I mean, you mentioned there are 3 entitlement programs. That's a 4th, an extension of that. You would work with the unions. You worked on collective bargaining deals with Marty Beal. I remember the two of you standing side by side saying, we cut a deal, something you'll never see with Scott Walker. I remember when you thought the roads needed to be fixed and you tried to push through a gas tax increase. And you worked with Democrats to do W-2. You and Wally Kinnicky worked together. You were pragmatists who used government to come up with solutions. In this race, you're an ideologue, someone who's saying, I won't raise taxes, I'll repeal this, I'll repeal that. When exactly did you make this change from being the pragmatist who liked to use government to solve things,
Yep.
and now someone who's...
Lee, you're misstating history. You're misstating history. I have never given up being a conservative. If you remember correctly, I was always an individual that was mischaracterized. When I ran for the governorship, you and this paper said I was too conservative to get elected. My moniker was Dr. No. I also, you compared me to Scott Walker. Big difference. Scott Walker had big majorities of his own political party in both houses of the legislature. I never had a majority until I went out and was able to campaign on picking up 2/3 of the cost of education so we could give the people property taxes. So in order to govern, I had to work with the Democrats. I didn't give up my principles. Let's take a look. 91 tax cuts, welfare reform. Can you imagine being able to get welfare reform through the Democrats? I was able to do that. I didn't give up. That was not a Democrat idea. That was a conservative idea. The tax cuts were not Democrat ideas. They were conservative ideas from me. But I was able to get enough Democrats to vote for them. And so I've always been able to work and solve problems. And I still would submit to you that I am the best person to solve America's problems today.
Or on a question of polling, Rasmussen poll last Saturday had all the Republican candidates trailing Tammy Baldwin, and you were trailing more than, I think, both Hovde and Newman. What do you make of that? Because one of the arguments of your campaign has been Tommy Thompson, he's the most electable.
Yeah, I am.
That poll would argue otherwise.
That poll was an outlier. There were 12 consistent polls that said I was the only one that could win. 12. One poll said I didn't. I would submit our internal pollings. The 12 other polls said I was the only one that could beat Tammy Baldwin. Plus, I'm the only one that's won statewide.
Why do you think the other candidates can't look? You're saying you're the only one that can win. The other ones are behind in the poll. Why do you think you're the only one?
Well, let's take a look at the state, all right? The recall election, the exit polling, what did it have? Exit polling has showed that Barack Obama was 6 or 7 points. I can't remember exactly. I think it was 7. Had more points than Mitt Romney coming out of the June 5th recall for Governor Walker. And so 4 years ago, he carried the state was by 14 points, 14 percentage points. And when you look at that, more than likely, I hope it's not true. I hope and pray that, they're going to Wisconsin. But we haven't elected a Republican in Wisconsin since the second term of Ronald Reagan. And so past history would tell you that Wisconsin may vote for Barack Obama. Right? Today is ahead. So who over here has got the gravitas, the history of convincing independents and Reagan Democrats to vote for a Republican?
But isn't that going to just what Dan was saying?
No.
The importance of pragmatism,
No.
and that's what you got elected on
No,
before.
my records of tax cuts, welfare reform is what brought those individuals over to my side. And I'm the only one that has ever won the state. I've done it 5 times, once in the primary, 4 times against Democrats. And my cumulative, or my percentage, if you put it all together in a cumulative and divide it by 4, is around 19.5 percentage points. No Republican's ever done that. No Republican has never, ever won 71 out of the 72 counties. Nobody. And that tells me that I am the only one still today, or has the best chance of beating Tammy Baldwin.
But do you think the negative campaigning, the negative ads that we're seeing are cutting you guys apart so much blood is being shed that it's gonna be tough to beat Tammy in the fall one?
No, I don't think so. I think, there's such a divide between my positions and Tammy Baldwin's that there really is no question that is going to come together. But everybody says negative campaigning, but everybody, looks at me when I'm the last person. The only reason I got into it, I was running nothing but positive campaigns like I've always done. Mm-hmm. And then the Club for Growth, then Eric Hovey, then Mark Newman have all fired at me and mischaracterized my record on being a corporate lobbyist, being for Obamacare, and being a spender, when I've just got done telling you it's a difference between a tax cut and spending is a huge difference. I'm going for the tax cut.
So can we just talk a little bit about?
Wait a minute, tell me you want it.
And also, what effect? Governor, you haven't been on a ballot in this state.
What?
You haven't been on the ballot statewide in Wisconsin since the late 90s.
14 years.
A lot of things have changed.
Absolutely.
We talked about it before the meeting started here. The way news is delivered, the way campaigns are conducted. What's been the most striking thing for you, and how has it affected the way that you're presenting your campaign?
It is much more divided, Tim. Much more partisan, which I think was Marty's position. It's much more partisan out there. I think it's evidenced by the June 5th vote. That's extremely partisan. And that is a big difference than when I ran the last time. But I want to point out that 88% of the people still know me in the state of Wisconsin. And it's amazing, young people know all about me. People that were not even born. I've got a lot of support from young people in this state. And people, do you know anybody else, Tim, in America that could run, maybe there is, but I don't know of any, that could run statewide just using their first name? I can't think of any either, except me. I use my first name, and people know exactly. You say Tommy, people know who it is, and that's a familiarity and a badge of support that I have earned, and people trust me, and that's why I believe when they go into the ballot box on August 14th that they're going to be voting for me, Tommy, and that I will be able to solidify the base after that and go on to defeat Tammy Baldwin. And I would submit once again, I'm the only one capable of doing that.
Getting back to fundraising again, your wealth has been well chronicled since you left government. Have you thought about putting more of your own money into this campaign than you have so far? I think you've only put in $35,000 or something like that so far. Would you contemplate putting in millions like Hovey has?
No.
And why not?
I don't think that's right. I don't think people should buy an election from their own wealth. I will have put more money in than what you described.
Will we see 7 figures at all by
No.
high 6 figures?
Well, no,
But I mean, if you're going to get beat by a candidate,
I'm not
who put
going
all
to get
this-
beat, Lee.
Well, okay, but the polls are showing some strength by Hovey. Clearly, he's spending money that's worked to his advantage.
Well,
If
I'm
in
being
the end
outspent
he-
10-1, yes.
Yeah, if in the end he did defeat you because he put in his own money, and you have the financial capability to put significantly more dollars than you have so far. Have you thought about it?
My campaign certainly has.
And what did you tell them?
We're watching it day by day.
So it sounds like you may be willing to free up a few more dollars if you have to.
I've already freed up some more dollars.
How are your investments doing?
Huh?
How are your investments doing?
How are yours?
Okay.
Huh? How are yours?
Governor, I want to follow up, Dave Umhafer with PolitiFact.
Yeah, Dave, how are you?
You mentioned a couple of times, it seems to be sticking in your craw, this corporate lobbyist charge by Hovde and the Democrats. I know you're not a registered lobbyist, but what were you doing when you called the Speaker of the House in North Carolina on behalf of your private equity clients to talk about a bill that
First off, that
private equity
was
firms want to stop?
first off, that was not a client.
Who were you calling on behalf of?
I was calling on a friend of a friend asked me to make a call.
Who was that?
It was his name is I'll get it for you. I'll get it for you. But it's
What was your intention with the call?
it was nothing. If you remember, and I never talked to the speaker.
Right, but what were you gonna say to him?
I was just asking if what they wanted to find out from me is whether or not that bill was going to be, they wanted to know if the bill was going to be able, it was not to be passed, but whether or not it was going to be up for a public hearing, or, can't remember if it was for a public hearing, if it was going to be calendared. And I said, I can find that out. That was for the call, nothing else. You know, whether or not the House was going to do it. And if you know parliamentary procedure, which you do, the speaker usually determines when a bill is going to be brought up. They wanted to know, and they couldn't get that information. And I thought, you know, they asked me if I could find out when the bill was going to be either I think it was going to be up for debate. And so I said, so I called the speaker's office. I talked to, I think his chief of staff or his legislative assistant. That's all, just to find,
Did you want to express an opinion on the bill itself, the merits
No.
of the bill?
no. I just wanted to know, they wanted to know, first off, if it was going to be up, because they allegedly had to do something. I had no dog in that hunt at all, none whatsoever.
He was asking about the term lobbying. Your response has been, I'm not a registered lobbyist, I've never been a registered lobbyist. But in terms of the general notion of lobbying, have you ever, on behalf of a corporate client, called a legislator to encourage them to pass a particular bill?
I did a lot of that when I was governor.
After governor, after you left the Bush administration, did you ever?
Did it as secretary.
I said after you left the Bush administration.
God, I don't know if I ever have or not. Dan, I can't tell you if I have or not. I don't think so.
I was just trying to think of the general idea of lobbying. You seem to
No,
keep
but the
on
general idea of lobbying, you are certain requirements that you have to comply with. And I have never registered to be a lobbyist. They asked me to, and I said, no, I would never do it.
But you've, as far as you know, since you left the Bush administration.
I can't say
you've
for
never-
sure. I can't say for sure. You know, you talk to, just like a friend asked me, you know, can you call somebody to see if a bill is gonna be, you know, I could have conceivably done that.
What about someone like the Constella Group? I mean, their
Who?
CEO, Constella Group?
Costello Group was that.
Their CEO said that they hired you to introduce, so you could introduce them to officials in Washington. This was several years ago.
Who's Costello?
I thought you would know.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Costello, who is it?
It's a healthcare group.
David,
Yeah.
I don't think I know him.
Okay. We'll talk about that one later.
No, I mean, if you got some information, I can't, Costello Group, I don't think I've ever, I don't even know who it is. Give me a name,
Well, it's on your disclosure reports.
is it?
Yeah. We'll talk about that.
All right, I don't know who you're talking about, I really don't. You must mispronounce it.
Costanza? No, it's Costella.
Costello.
Costello.
I don't, I really,
All right, we'll
Back to a policy question. At the end of the year, and you referenced it earlier.
but give me the information, I'll look it up and call you back, David.
You referenced it earlier. We're facing, as a country, a fiscal cliff.
Right.
The sequestration or the mandatory spending cuts are due. Bush tax cuts expire, payroll tax cuts expire. Now, if you win, you will not have taken office by the time that needs to be resolved. But something tells me that the current Congress may well kick this down the road a bit. So what would your plan be for dealing with all of that? Where are you at on the Bush tax cuts? Where are you at on the mandatory spending cuts? What do you think needs to happen?
I think the worst thing in the world right now, when the recession is very close to being back into a full-blown recession, I think the worst medicine at this particular time would be to raise taxes. And so I absolutely would not be for raising any taxes on anybody or any group. I think that trying to divide up America in little subplots and saying you're going to get taxed, you're not going to get taxes is bad for the economic conditions we're faced right now. I think we need some degree of certainty, and I think the Bush tax cuts at worst need to be postponed, and at best need to be continued.
What about the spending cuts side of that equation?
We're gonna have to make some tough cuts in spending.
Would you make cuts to the Defense Department as well,
As I told you, I would have a 5% reduction across
even for defense?
everything.
Okay.
Governor, I'm Bill Glauber.
Hi, Bill.
Hi. It's a very.
Bill Oliver.
Glauber. It's a
okay.
very general question. I've listened to you. You once ran a state. You ran a large government department. A very
Huge
important
government.
department. Why on earth would you want to be a junior senator in a dysfunctional institution for the next 6 years of the only life you're ever going to have?
Thank
I'm
you.
serious. I
No,
mean,
but-
why would you want to be a junior senator in the U.S. Senate?
Because I really sincerely believe that this country's in very bad shape. I have 3 children and 8 grandchildren. And I'm looking at your children. You don't have any grandchildren yet, I don't think, but look at your children. And we've always promised our children and grandchildren that we're going to give them a country that's stronger, freer, fairer, safer, with more options than what you and I had. For the first time in our history, we can no longer say that. We have exceeded the gross national product of this country with debt, and we're placed in a situation with Greece, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. And I believe that the worst thing in the world would be, a nightmare, would be to have Barack Obama reelected and have Harry Reid as the majority leader in the United States Senate. I sincerely believe I am the strongest and best candidate, and may be by far the best candidate to beat Tammy Baldwin. And if in fact Barack Obama gets elected, what is there as a backstop of any sort if Harry Reid is in the United States Senate? That's why I believe I will become the 51st senator from this state to become that backstop. The Republicans could stop the actions of Obama leading this country even further down the path of fiscal calamity. And that is why I'm running. For all the children and grandchildren in America, that we need to change this direction of this country. I'm running for the right reasons. You're absolutely correct. I don't need this. I believe I have the best ideas, especially in healthcare and in the economy and balancing the budget, than any of the candidates, and believe I am by far the strongest candidate to win, and maybe the only candidate that can beat Tammy Baldwin. For all of those reasons, I decided to run and run hard, and as I've told a lot of people, I am working harder than at any time before in any of my elections, except for the first time I ran for governor.
Time for one more question. Who wants it?
I've been asking that same question of a number of other people. Why is he running? He's 70, he's gonna be a junior senator. Why is he doing this? And the answers I've gotten, there are 2 answers. One, it's in his DNA to run for office, and 2, this is an ego trip. Is either of those correct?
Neither one. I just got done telling you why I'm running. That is the reason. I'm running for the right reasons, and I sincerely believe it would be a nightmare to have Harry Reid as the majority leader and Barack Obama as president for the next 4 years, when there will be nothing to deter Barack Obama from continuing to drive this country towards a European socialistic type of country. That's why I'm running. I don't need the ego. I don't need anything on my resume. I've already accomplished more than anybody else ever thought I was possible of doing from Elroy, Wisconsin.
Can we get one more in?
Does that mean that you think Romney will lose the election? Does that mean you think Obama will win the election?
No, but I think that Obama's got I think that Obama has, right now, based upon historical perspectives, may have a chance to win Wisconsin. And I think I also believe if I'm on the ballot, I give Mitt Romney the best shot he has to carry the state of Wisconsin.
Governor,
Dave?
do you think that Tammy Baldwin is a formidable candidate, and if so, why?
Anytime you have boatloads of money, you're formidable. Eric Hovde has proven that. He's outspending me 10 to 1. Well, all the candidates, I don't know, just Eric, but they're all outspending me about 10 to 1. So, that in modern day politics, tearing down as a way to get people's support.
Do you think she would outspend you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Where do you say 10 to 1? You're tied with Newman at about 2.3 million in the last, and even if you add Club for Growth, that's about maybe 800, maybe $1 million. But
Oh, it's more than that.
well, the records as of this week were just under $1 million. But the 10 to 1, I don't get the math on that at all.
Well, what does Hovde spend? 6?
Four.
He spent more than that.
I think he has.
Oh, okay.
So there's something that the records aren't showing, or
He spent a lot more. All right, 4,
okay,
4, 6, 7 to 1?
maybe not 10 to 1, but they're definitely outspending you.
I'm way outspending that.
And
I
finally,
think when it's all said and done, it'll be 10 to 1. That's what my campaign has told me.
and finally, your challengers are all younger, and the age issue has come up. Do you want to address that, and should that be an issue for voters?
No, it should not be an issue. It's what you can accomplish. This country, I mean, do you want to send somebody that's young and inexperienced? Or do you want to send somebody that knows how to get things done? Immediately facing America. The problems are such that you have to have answers and solutions. Who better than somebody with the experience? And I think that by far, I'm the best candidate to do that. My health is great. My mind is very clear, as I think you will have to attest to. And I think that, as Ronald Reagan said, I'm not going to use my age against the immaturity, the inexperience of the other candidates. And Ronald Reagan didn't start president until he was 72.
How do you explain then what happened in Indiana, which just happened 2 nights ago in Texas, where much younger candidates beat veteran political office holders, and the voters turned against them in the Republican Party and went for somebody young, less experienced?
Marty, Senator Lugar didn't live in Indiana anymore. He never came back home. I've never left Wisconsin. Even when I was secretary, I voted in Wisconsin, and every weekend except around 9/11, when I was required to be in Washington, I come home. I live in Madison. My home is Madison. I farm in Elroy. And I've never left Wisconsin. Now, that's a big difference. When Senator Lugar tried to find out where his residence was, he had trouble when a reporter asked him where he lived, and he had trouble coming up with an address. I have no trouble coming up with an address. It's Elroy and Madison.
So there's no similarities like people are saying. What happened in Texas, a lot of political pundits this morning were talking about the same thing's going to happen in Wisconsin that happened in Texas.
You can believe that if you want to, Marty. I can tell
Answer
you.
the question.
I don't buy it because I don't think anybody's working as hard as I am.
If you do lose, is this your last race?
Well, Lee, I don't. Or Dan, it probably would be. It probably would be, sure. It's on July 4th, on July 4th, I was in 4 parades. No other senatorial candidate was in more than 2 or 3. If you remember the temperature, 103 degrees. I was in Oak Creek, Greenfield, what are the other 2?
Franklin and Pewaukee.
Franklin and Pewaukee, 4. And I didn't ride, I walked. But not only, the other candidates were walking, I was running back and forth, shaking hands up and down, and walking, and never once sat down. And 103-degree heat, over 10 miles. My young friend over there walked the first one, drove the car the second, walked the third, drove the car the fourth. And I would say that I'm physically fit and I can do it. And I don't think anybody, and I have a tremendous ability. You ask any of my staff, and you know this around the Capitol, that people said nobody could keep up with me. And to this day, it's very difficult for people to work as much as I do. It's the way I've been brought up.
Governor Thompson, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. Sorry that I took too long to explain Obamacare, but now you know what happened, and I want to tell you, Ernie, that's only half the story.
Okay, we'll get the other some other time.